Thank you, everyone, and welcome to our event today. So this event is about non-state actors and subnational governments in sustainable landscapes, where the rubber hits the road for achieving climate goals. This is a panel about collaboration and bringing about change on the ground. For that, we take an approach that looks across levels and sectors and focuses on, well, how the rubber hits the road, how these things are in practice. We have 5 panelists, and each plays a particular role in this panel around this topic. We start with a bit of research on multi-sectoral, multi-level governance of land use and land use change. I'll present a bit of an overview, and Thuy will be presenting some of that work from Vietnam. We have 2 representatives of non-state actors on the panel from private sector and civil society, and we have 2 representatives of those landscape-level actors who are in charge of the jurisdictions or territories where land use actually happens, where land use decisions are made and implemented, the subnational governments and in indigenous territories. So across the panelists, we'll be looking at some challenges and some opportunities or successes in bringing about real change on the ground. And I'm going to talk very briefly about research conducted by CIFOR on multi-level governance, and then make a couple comments about the private sector in particular. So for our multi-level governance research, we worked in 5 countries, in 11 subnational regions, around 54 sites of land use change. We used a comparative nested approach across these sites, across the regions, and across countries, conducted over 700 interviews with people involved in or knowledgeable about a particular land use or land use change. So we had in the end about more or less 20 red sites. We had about 20 deforestation and degradation sites, and we had about 10 sites that were not red, but they were some other attempt to stop deforestation and degradation. So our goal was to understand through these in-depth qualitative interviews how land use decisions are made and the potential of alternatives to business as usual, like RED or conservation initiatives of some sort, to bring about transformational change. We also studied the development of MRV mechanisms in 2 countries where we were able to examine specific progress on a technical process to see how that was working and how it was rolled out. So I'm just very quickly going to present some key findings. So one of the main findings we had right away was that the cross-sectoral challenges we see at the national level are just as common at the subnational level. It doesn't matter that the office is next door or across the sidewalk and the agriculture's here and forests are over there. We have really just as much problem in terms of working across sectors. We also find challenges across levels of governance. We have different data needs and other interests. We have different interests in the problem. We have challenges that are technical, they're financial, and they're political. We also have differences or imbalances in power and authority across levels of government. So it's not just different points of view, but also different powers and responsibilities in terms of statutory law. Sometimes we have issues with customary law. And there's a lot of informal realms of power as well that matter in terms of how these decisions are made. We also have different perspectives on the problem, such as drivers of deforestation, and different ways of implementing or not implementing the law to solve those problems. We'll hear a little bit about that in a minute. We also found that even these apparently very technical processes like MRV encounter considerable political problems or really political realities. Not all of these are bad things. So we also know that achieving serious climate mitigation in the agriculture, forest, and land use sector requires major changes in private sector land use practices. One study in 7 tropical countries found that 4 commodities alone, beef, soy, palm oil, and timber, were responsible for 40% of the total deforestation and resulting carbon emissions. This suggests considerable scope for large corporate enterprises to reduce overall rates of deforestation and contribute to more sustainable practices. So how do we track the important private sector voluntary commitments that have been made to address deforestation? And is this enough? How do we address the risks that deforestation-free supply chains might further exclude smallholders and other marginalized actors? And aside from the Cancun safeguards, such risks remain largely unrecognized by the UNFCCC. So to close, what I want to emphasize here are just 2 things. First, we all know we need to collaborate better. In our research and in forums like this is what we hear over and over again. And we have new important mechanisms for collaboration, such as with the private sector, the New York Declaration on Forests, the Zero Deforestation Commitments, platforms like the Consumer Goods Forum, TFA 2020, the FSC and certification movement, integration of private commitments into the NDCs. But we need to understand the challenges of collaboration, public-private, across sectors, across levels of government, and why it is so difficult to put this into practice. If it were easy, we would be doing it already. We would have been doing it for a long time. Second, we can't ignore political realities. We have many great ideas, but no matter how great they are, we always bump into reality when we hit the ground and try to start implementing. So in particular in the technical realm, we sometimes see politics as bad or use the term as something negative. But we can't ignore political realities. Politics is not necessarily good or bad, it just is. So we need to embrace this and learn to work in this reality. So I look forward now to what the panelists have to say from their own experiences on these issues to help point us in the right direction. Thank you.